Evangelion was made during a national crisis and a personal breakdown. During a year Japan would rather forget. What came out predicted exactly where your life was going, 30 years before you lived it. 1. The Japan that made Evangelion. Let's talk about 1995. Not in Japan as it exists in your imagination. The neon, the bullet trains, the pristine streets. I mean 1995, as it was actually lived, on the ground, by the people who inhabited it. 4 years earlier, Japan's economic bubble had collapsed. For context, the post-war Japanese economic miracle was the best thing around. Japan had rebuilt itself into the second largest economy on earth in less than 40 years. Full employment, rising wages, a social contract that said work hard, be loyal, and the system will take care of you. By 1991, that contract was gone. Asset prices crashed. Companies that had seemed immortal started shedding workers. The certainty that had defined Japanese life for 2 generations evaporated almost overnight. And then 1995 happened. January, the Kobe earthquake. Over 6,000 people dead, and the response from the government was widely regarded as catastrophically slow. The self-defense forces took hours to mobilize. Aid was delayed. Thousands of people sat in rubble waiting for a system that didn't come. March. A religious cult released sarin gas on the Tokyo subway during morning rush hour. 13 people died, thousands were injured. A group of highly educated, idealistic young people had been recruited by a doomsday cult. They followed their leader with total devotion and nearly poisoned the entire capital. This is the year Neon Genesis Evangelion began broadcasting. The texture of the air that Hideaki Anno was breathing every single day seeped into it. The society that had placed total faith in the economy, the government, the social contract, all 3 failed within the 12 months. That's the world Shinji was born into. 2. The architecture of Japanese emptiness. Here's something that Western viewers almost always misread about Evangelion. The slow parts, the long silences, the held shots of empty rooms and ceilings and objects that don't do anything. Scenes that went too long because nobody had time to cut them. It's the show speaking in its native language. There's a concept in Japanese aesthetics called ma, which also means space, gap, interval. It's the principle of negative space, the meaning found in absence. Ma exists everywhere in Japanese culture, in architecture, where rooms are designed around empty floor space rather than furniture, in conversation, where silence between sentences is respectful, in music, in calligraphy, in garden design, and it exists very deliberately in Evangelion. When Anno holds a shot of a ceiling for seconds, he's telling you what's happening in Shinji's head without using a single word. Anno has been very open about the fact that he was in a severe depressive episode while making the show. Anno found a visual grammar for an inner state that most storytelling doesn't even try to depict. Your brain knows what that ceiling means, because you've stared at one, not because you've studied Japanese aesthetics. 3. The salaryman shadow. Now let's talk about NERV. NERV is a paramilitary organization that fights angels using giant biomechanical weapons. But look at how it actually functions. The staff work catastrophic hours without complaint. They receive no clear psychological support despite witnessing atrocities on a regular basis. They go home alone and eat prepackaged food and come back and do it again. Criticism of leadership is impossible. The organization's goals are deliberately obscured from the people carrying them out. The children pilots, doing the most dangerous work, are given no explanation. This is a post-war Japanese corporation. The Japanese economic miracle I described earlier was not built on innovation alone. The company was not just where you worked, it was who you were. There's even a word for what that system produced at its most extreme: karoshi. Basically, death from overwork. Japanese workers dying from strokes and heart attacks induced by 100-hour work weeks. Karoshi is never mentioned in Evangelion, but it haunts the background of every NERV scene. Gendo Ikari runs NERV like a man who has fully internalized the post-war corporate logic. Total institutional loyalty expected, emotional needs treated as operational liabilities, his own son instrumentalized as a resource to be deployed. He's presented as a man who learned that this was what strength looked like, that closing yourself off was protection, that the institution mattered more than the individual, that love was a vulnerability you couldn't afford. Shinji is the burnt-out junior employee who cannot say no, but he also cannot find a reason to say yes. He performs the role, he gets in the robot, and he comes back emptied out every single time. Misato drinks to cope and overworks to feel useful. This is a reconstruction of what that particular society does to human beings. 4. Hikikomori before the word existed. Something was happening in Japan at exactly the moment Evangelion aired. It didn't have a widely recognized name yet. It was just a pattern, especially among young men, of retreating entirely from society, quitting school, quitting work, locking themselves in their bedrooms, emerging only at night, if at all, simply because the outside world had made them an implicit promise. Effort leads to belonging and performance leads to love. That promise had broken, and the retreat was the rational response to the betrayal. By the late 90s and early 2000s, this had crystallized into a recognized social crisis. They gave it a name, Hikikomori. Look at Shinji's bedroom. There alone with his SDAT player, and at every demand the outside world makes on him, his instinct is to fold, to go somewhere the world can't reach him. The Hikikomori withdraws because he cared too much, for too long, in a direction the world never rewarded. The door closes because opening it kept leading to the same result. Asuka is the opposite response to the exact same broken promise. She responds to the same absence of genuine love and recognition by performing harder, louder, more desperately, more skill, more dominance, until she can't sustain the performance anymore. And here's why this travels. And if you're watching this in the US or in Europe right now, the specific Japan of 1995 is not a foreign country to you. 5. The city that was built to be destroyed. Tokyo 3 is one of the most quietly specific pieces of world building in anime. On the surface, it looks like a futuristic city. Clean streets, geometric architecture, everything efficient and ordered. The buildings retract into the earth. The entire city infrastructure is designed with the assumption that it will regularly be attacked, damaged, and rebuilt. The streets during non-alert periods are strangely empty. Beautiful, functional, but hollow. Nobody lingers. The city exists to be moved through efficiently, not inhabited warmly. Japan is one of the only countries on Earth that has encoded the expectation of catastrophe into its national psychology and then into its architecture. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the firebombing of Tokyo, the 1923 earthquake that killed over 100,000 people. The country has rebuilt from annihilation many times, and that history doesn't disappear. A city must be able to survive being destroyed, because it will be destroyed. That's geological and historical fact for anyone living on those islands. When impermanence is guaranteed, you don't build things meant to last forever. You build things meant to be replaced. The cherry blossoms are beautiful precisely because they fall. The city is beautiful precisely because it won't survive. Tokyo 3 is a city where nobody puts down roots because the ground isn't stable. And the people who live in it, Shinji, Misato, Rei, Asuka, don't build real homes there. They occupy space, they pass through. The apartments are transient. The relationships are suspended in a permanent state of almost. In the real Tokyo urban landscape, the pachinko parlors vibrate with noise but never ask you to stay. In the 24-hour convenience stores, every interaction is perfectly efficient and entirely impersonal. The capsule hotels are engineered for the body's smallest requirements. Japan is the most sophisticated civilization for efficient transit and the least practiced at designing spaces to grow in. Evangelion just turns the dial up until you can finally see it. You're watching Evangelion as a mirror of right now. Somewhere inside it, you recognize something you felt and never had a word for. Evangelion gave you the image, and now you can never unsee it.